What's up? Good morning, bonjour, ni hao, sin chao. It's me, Mr. Jordan. If you've never been to the channel before, I'm an English teacher and I do some novel analysis, study tips, and just general other videos that'll help you out with studying and being a great student. So today we're looking at chapter 41 of The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So we're going to do a quick summary, 10-15 seconds, then we're going to jump right into some deeper analysis and do close readings of 2 or 3 different quotes. Brief recap of chapter 41. So in this chapter, our narrator Offred looks back at what she's sort of written or told us as the reader so far, and then she also reveals that her affair with Nick has developed into something that's much more serious and ongoing. And even though it's dangerous to her existence, it's also keeping her motivated to live, or at least excited by her day-to-day existence in a way that she hasn't been before. Now we're going to get into some deeper analysis and a line-by-line reading of a few longer quotes from the chapter. So in the first quote, the narrator Offred breaks down the fourth wall. So there's a bit of a meta-narrative thing happening where she actually addresses us as the reader or the future reader or listener to her story that she's been telling this time, to, in effect, The Handmaid's Tale. I wish this story were different. I wish it were more civilized. I wish it showed me in a better light. If not happier, then at least more active, less hesitant, less distracted by trivia. I wish it had more shape. I wish it were about love or about sudden realizations important to one's life, or even about sunsets, birds, rainstorms, or snow. So what she's telling us here is that she's wishing for a more conventional sort of life. And notice the repetition there, almost poetic. I wish, I wish, I wish, right? Like I wish upon a star, like again, getting back to this fairy tale idea of being able to wish away your terrible existence to some other different life, to a different story. And this idea, this imagery of sunsets or birds or rainstorms or snow, again, it sort of harkens to a different kind of novel. A novel that's a third-person story about a protagonist who goes on an adventure and follows a conventional storyline arc that probably ends with the sort of happily ever after, or if not that, at least the discovery of some important or exciting thing. And I think Atwood is almost foreshadowing that that's not going to happen to this Handmaid's Tale. We're here, we're reading the story, but likely the end is not going to be good for our protagonist. Also note the word trivia in there. This doesn't mean like a game. It means trivia in the sense of like little bits of unimportant or inessential facts. To follow up on that first quote, in the next page she tells us, I'm sorry there's so much pain. I'm sorry it's in fragments. It's this sort of light and dark, the back and forth. First, she's wishing for something else. She's sorry about the way it is now. In the next quote, Offred almost tells us who she wants us to be or who her reader is. Like she's trying to imagine what the purpose of this is, what, in other words, has kept her going and kept her telling her story. So she says, quote, after all, I want you to hear it, as I will hear yours too, if I ever get the chance, if I ever meet you, or if you escape, in the future or in heaven, or in prison or underground, or some other place. I think there's allusions here to the possible reader or listener, not only us as a reader of the text, but also the idea that her story could reach Moira, not the Moira who she's met in the nightclub, but the Moira of the past, of her memories, or her daughter who she's been separated from and taken away from, her former lover and partner Luke, her missing mother, right? So this idea, this illusion that possibly a reader or someone who could hear the story is someone from her past. To continue with the quote, what they have in common is that they're not here. By telling you anything at all, I'm at least believing in you. I believe you're there. I believe you into being. Because I'm telling you this story, I will your existence. I tell, therefore you are. So it's a distressing quote, but at its base level, it's about hope. It's about the woman who's imprisoned, Offred, hoping that there's someone else out there who's still free to carry on hope. It also suggests the idea that in the future, Gilead will no longer be existing as the current regime. So her telling us this story is dependent on an alternative future, on the possibility of a world that's not Gilead, right? It's what keeps her going, this idea that a different world can be reimagined. The same way the history of America was rewritten with the history of Gilead, she's hoping the history of Gilead could or may still be rewritten again. So this harkens back to this overarching theme or idea of the palimpsest of history. And then maybe by rewriting history, by writing over what's happening in Gilead, she's giving the possibility of another layer, a new layer of text. The final quote we're going to look at in chapter 41 is where she discusses, or she tells us, what's going on with Nick and how her relationship with him has changed. So he's supposed to be the body, the enforcer, the hand of the law, the right-hand man of the commander. Yet here he is developing this sort of intimate, or at least physical and caring relationship with Offred. So he's also breaking the rules here, and that warmth, that feeling of being cared for, is something that it's been a really long time since she's experienced. So she's now developing this further, if not love, at least attachment to Nick. Quote, "The fact is, I no longer want to leave, escape, cross the border to freedom. I want to be here with Nick, where I can get at him." Serious connection happening, right? She's finally feeling at least intimate, related to, touched. Telling this, I'm ashamed of myself, but there's more to it than that. Even now, I can recognize that this admission as a kind of boasting. There's pride in it, because it demonstrates how extreme and therefore justified it was for me. How well worth it. It's like stories of illness and near death from which you have recovered, like stories of war. They demonstrate seriousness. This is an interesting allusion. It again speaks to this idea that the narrator, Offred, is really aware of her narrative, of her own story. And basically the main struggle of this book is of her coming to grips with whether she can be the author of her own life, whether she gets to create her narrative and her story, or whether the outside imposition of force and might and coercion from Gilead gets to tell the story in the end. So that's how she's trying to subvert the social organization and the structure and social hierarchy that they've imposed, right? They've imposed this gendered rule of law with the commanders at top, and then the men enforcing it, the army, and then the handmaids and the other women who are acting as servants and vessels at the bottom. But by being an author, by creating her own story, by telling us this story and sharing this with us, now by creating an intimate and illegal, seditious relationship with Nick, she knows she's subverting that, and that keeps her going. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more English novel analysis, study tips, etc. Like this video. In the comments below, let me know what else you want to see or what you think of this one. Take care.